Okay, guys, good afternoon. Welcome to the Zoom. Not too much to say before we get on to our special guest, but obviously we don't have any games on this weekend with the long weekend. We do have training this Wednesday night, and that's this Wednesday and the following Wednesday. There will be skill drills for the first, second, and third year umpires next week. So make sure if you're one of those guys to bring your whistle. There'll be no Zoom meeting next Monday night. The only thing I wanted to mention from recent weeks, we've had some issues with umpires not checking their details about their appointment. So when they come out, make sure you look at the venue, the time, the date. We've had some turn up to wrong grounds and some turn up at the wrong times, even the wrong day. So yeah, just double check when the appointments come out, that you know exactly the details. All right, let's get on to our very special guest. I'm really excited to speak to this lady. She's someone I've known for many, many years. And she is, I often say when I talk about her, that she's the nicest person I think that I know. And she's such a great ambassador for umpiring. She's set records and she'll continue to set records in her umpiring career. She's the very first female field umpire in the AFL, also set that record in the SANFL. I think she may have become the first female field umpire in the Adelaide Footy League, or the Amateur League, back when she was involved. And she's kindly agreed to come on the Zoom tonight to tell us her story and answer a few questions. So, Eleni, I did see your face there before. Do you want to unmute yourself and welcome to tonight's Zoom meeting? It's an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me, Cole. And nice to see some familiar faces. And just to let you know, I'm in lockdown in Melbourne, and it's great. So great to see some people in Adelaide, I guess, enjoying footy season, which is great.
Yeah, so tell us about that at the moment. It's been a terrible time the last 12 months for everyone in Victoria. So you're staying in Victoria at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, so basically a couple of weeks ago now almost, I think, we were asked who could leave pretty much tonight. Basically, that was how it went. And obviously a few umpires kind of skipped out of Melbourne, went to Sydney and some to Brisbane, and then they umpired the games there that weekend. So I was lucky enough, I had a game in Melbourne last week. So I umpired one of the few AFL matches in Melbourne without a crowd. Which is always a bit of a funny, I guess, experience, but, just happy to be out there umpiring. And then last weekend, had the weekend off because of the bye round. So we know the next few weeks going to be pretty up in the air with everything, considering most states are pretty close to Victorians. And so a few umpires will go to Tassie, will go to Sydney to umpire, but there'll be a few of us who just miss out this next couple of weeks, but that's just how it is. And came at a good time with the bye rounds. And so there aren't that many games of footy. So hopefully, after round 14, we can get back to a bit more normality in Melbourne and for footy as well.
So is there a chance that you'll relocate for this period of time while there is a lockdown in Melbourne?
I don't think so at this stage. There's actually quite a number of people in Sydney at the moment. So I think I'm not quite sure how many exactly, but there's enough to facilitate the games. And there's only going to be 5 games the next round after this one. So we don't actually need as many umpires for the next couple of weeks because of the bye. So, even though it means a few of us do miss out, it is really good timing for the AFL for this to come and be able to kind of change those games as such. So I think there's a few umpires in Sydney. A few of them will be coming back to Melbourne, but fingers crossed it's short lasting and we can get back on with what's been a really great footy season.
Absolutely. And there is a bit of a rumour around about next year, possibly, instead of having everyone based in Melbourne, umpires will have the option of moving back to their home state. Look, obviously nothing official has come out, but if that option does come to you, is there a chance that you could come back to Adelaide?
It's definitely something I'll think about. Obviously, family and friends are there. This will be our 7th year in Melbourne. So we've loved our time there, but we'll just wait and see how it all plays out. But just feel really fortunate to, I guess last year have actually escaped the challenging parts of lockdown and been able to umpire. And we'll see how it plays out. It'd be great to, be able to umpire from Adelaide if it comes to pass. But having said that, really excited that Giles and Tom got to umpire on the weekend just been. So if we were there, they wouldn't have had an opportunity. So it's great for them.
Absolutely. Giles, we all know very well. to umpiring through our ranks before going under the SANFL, and yeah, that's great to see him making his debut. So let's go from the start. Tell us about how you got into umpiring, and give us a bit of an overview of your career so far.
So I just grew up loving footy. I actually grew up basically right next door to SANFL North Adelaide Roosters ground. So pretty attuned to watching the footy, going along to lots of my friends' games. My brother used to play. I used to keep the footy with my dad all the time, and I played all through primary and high school. And then in year 9, there was just a daily bulletin notice that said the basic umpiring course. And I kind of thought, I love footy, I like fitness and a bit of pocket money, so I'll give it a go. And from there, I went out to the Northeastern Metro Junior Football Association. Doesn't exist as such and anymore, but was welcomed out there with open arms. And I think back now and think about my parents dropping a 13-year-old girl off to this basically all male group of men and boys, and just to think that they were kind of courageous enough to do that, I'm really fortunate. Was lucky enough to, I guess, as I said, be really supported by the coaches out there and the fellow umpires. So Scott Hosking kind of took me under his wing the first session and said, come and run with me. I'm sure a few of you know him, and that was really nice of him. And I found a really supportive community there with Jeff and Graham Badcock and Paul Cameron, and so many fantastic supports. So I umpired through, my very first year was in the green shirt program when it used to exist, and umpired under 8s all year, and had some really, unique experiences as umpiring is in the first few years of joining that kind of, I guess, career path. So I umpired there, umpired in the North Adelaide Schools District as well. So I umpired both year 2, 3s and then under 8s on the weekend. And then from there, like everyone, just progressed through the Northeastern Metro up into the under 16s, which was the highest grade that they had. In 2008, we had some of the AFL umpires come out to our training session as that happens. And they said to me, oh, you look, you can kind of run. Do you want to come and run some boundary umpiring in the SANFL? And I didn't ever do boundary, to be honest. But I thought, it's worth giving it a go. So I went out to the SANFL and did some under 17s boundary umpiring for a year. Couldn't throw the ball in to save my life, to be perfectly honest, but had a really nice time running around, and then was lucky enough to be invited out as a field umpire to the SANFL in 2009. So from there, umpired at that time, then that became the under 16s and the under 18s when it changed over there. And then lucky enough to be appointed to the under 16s grand final. And then as per progression, umpired in the under 18s into reserves. And then from there, I umpired I was lucky enough to umpire a couple of reserves grand finals. And I was actually picked in one of the under 18s national championships, where we went to Melbourne and were observed by the AFL observers. And it was there that Adam Davis and at the time Wayne Campbell observed me, and they came and basically said to me, we'd like to invite you to be part of a female pathway in Melbourne. And so just that year, the year before that, I made my debut at SANFL seniors. And then from there was invited to move across to Melbourne to be part of this inaugural pathway. And so pretty hesitant. I didn't really know much about Melbourne as such. I'd always lived in Adelaide. My friends and family in Adelaide, but as all of you know, you can't regret not taking an opportunity. So Jill and I moved to Melbourne in 2015. And then from there, I umpired predominantly in the VFL and trained with the AFL in the first couple of years, became a rookie. And then in 2017, made my debut as a AFL field umpire. So, pretty unique journey in terms of the female field umpire pathway component to it. But otherwise, just a normal umpiring journey that has many of the challenges I'm sure all of you have faced as well.
So how many AFL games are you up to now?
47 now.
Oh, awesome. That's brilliant. And I'm absolutely sure you umpired some amateur footy or Adelaide Footy League footy. That was when you were on the SANFL panel, wasn't it? Is that right?
Yeah. So I came in when things changed from 17 to 19 to 16 to 18. So at that stage, and as still is, the under 16s only went for the first basically 8 weeks of the season. So those umpires who were basically in that panel trying to umpire under 18s footy, they went to the amateur league in the second part of the year. So I spent a couple of years umpiring Division 3, Division 2 games, some Division 1 reserves, and then I've mixed my years up, but then I was the first female to umpire a Division 1 amateur league game. I was very fortunate. It was a really cool experience to kind of do that, and I actually had a couple other females in the goals in that game as well. So it was pretty cool to be part of something quite special. And I didn't umpire a lot of amateur league footy, but we did attend some training sessions and do some games, and I really loved my opportunity to umpire men, because that was a really great pathway onto senior footy in the SANFL.
Yeah, great. So the challenges of being a pioneer as a female field umpire, what's been the hardest thing for you to cope with?
It's a great question because umpiring is a challenging sport. And so, I faced the similar challenges to the boys have in terms of, players, spectators, social media disagreeing with your decisions and things like that. So I think the most challenging part, I guess, when I first started was just that I guess it was just a bit different. And so that meant that, spectators or players, I'd walk onto the field and they'd be like, oh, that's the female umpire. And you'd always have people, I guess, thinking differently of you and I guess judging your capabilities because you were different from what they knew. On top of that, you walk out in a shirt that was 3 sizes too big and, you had to kind of try and find a change room to change in on your own or find a space to kind of do that. And so I guess there are the challenges at community level footy. And that's not to say that some of those challenges aren't still there, unfortunately, around the country, just in terms of, I guess, change rooms and things like that. But, again, as I mentioned before, I've had a really supportive peer group and coaching group throughout my whole journey, from juniors all the way through to AFL footy. So that significantly helped. I think particularly if I think more so at senior football level in terms of SANFL, VFL and now at AFL level, the social media side of things and the media play they can play a really significant part in terms of, I guess, criticism and feedback and things like that. And so not that it necessarily affects me significantly personally, I guess, or anymore, but it definitely does make you kind of doubt, a bit of self-doubt, I guess, for example, just in terms of, we know as umpires, there's a lot of criticism around anyway. And, I had an article written about me a couple of years ago now, and the title was "Looked as Dropped." And the article didn't really mention me in it. It was just kind of a bit of a attention grabber, basically. And so I think things like that in terms of being a female, I'll give you an example, and you've all seen it. I umpired the Richmond Bulldogs match on a Friday night a few weeks ago, but I actually umpired in the VFL night before. So I was the emergency umpire, and then Dave Harris got injured in the first few minutes, and I replaced him. And just an example, no one would have noticed if another man had replaced Dave Harris, but everyone noticed because it was me. And in this instance, it wasn't a negative reason, for me, but it does mean that sometimes when I make an error on the field, everyone knows who made the error. Whereas if it was one of the other 33 boys on the list, it's generally just an umpire, not necessarily singled out or anything like that. So I guess they're the challenges with being, obvious on the field. We try and, as umpires, go unnoticed, but just through, I guess, my appearance and my high voice, as I'm sure you all hear on the field whenever I umpire, it's pretty hard not to notice me, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, I can always pick when you're umpiring the games, that's for sure. So have there been any negative spectator or player or social media comments that have really upset you, really got to you?
I guess there's a couple of different examples. I've had a few instances with spectators in really junior grades, and everyone's had those experiences. And you kind of just think, I had a really foul thing said to me doing under 8s my first year by a parent who was an under 8 child, and just things like that make you just think, who really wants to do this when people are yelling that stuff at you when you're a child and they've got a child out there. But I think the two things that come to mind were a couple of instances that happened when I was an SA, and the reason they stay with me is because of how well they were dealt with. And so the first example was actually in the amateur league when I was umpiring a Division 1 reserves game at quite a nice club, I guess you could say. That's a nice way to put it. A club what you'd think you wouldn't expect as many kind of concerns. And again, it wasn't a bad thing at all, but I paid a free kick and the person said disagreed and said something and then said love. And I just thought, I don't really want to be treated that way and, terms like that used. So I ended up paying a 25-metre penalty against this person. And I thought to myself, I've probably overreacted here, like how silly to do that. But I thought, no, I don't really want people using those types of terms on the field with me. Anyway, I just forgot about it. As you do with footy, you try and just forget about all the challenging things that happen. And a couple of weeks later, I got an email from the amateur league and they said, we've received this letter for you. And I thought, oh my goodness, what does this letter say? And it was actually the player apologising. And he said, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have used language like that to single you out. I think you're a great umpire and I really wish you all the best. And so that was a bit of a opportunity for me to realise there's actually, really good people out there and people who, wouldn't even mean to say something that means something different to them. And to actually just call that out was really important. The other one that was, I guess, comes to mind is another instance that happened in the SANFL. I was umpiring. I was really lucky. If you don't remember the 2014 SANFL season, it was one of the first seasons that Norwood didn't do so well. And I umpired probably the first 7 rounds with Norwood and they lost pretty much every single one of them. So the Norwood supporters loved me. And I had a game down at Noarlunga on a Friday night and it was South versus Wood. And there was a bit of a group of Norwood supporters kind of hanging around kind of near where the family-friendly area is, which didn't really make sense. And basically I heard, just some words come over the fence, which were just really inappropriate. And again, I completely understand spectators yell things and say, silly things because they're passionate, that's fine. But what they said was just not okay. And I didn't do anything at the time, but I spoke to my fellow umpires after the match, and I said, I just didn't really feel comfortable with what was said. And I thought about, should I do something? Should I not do something? I ended up emailing Shane Harris and the SNFL, and the really positive thing that came out of it was that Norwood Football Club actually, put out a thing to their members and said that, language or, this type of behaviour was not okay toward an umpire, toward a spectator, toward a player. And if we hear things like that again, your whole membership will be revoked. And so, these types of circumstances that happened, I kind of doubted whether I say something or not, but I thought, I owe to other people coming through, girls and boys, to make sure that type of behaviour isn't really acceptable. And so, they're just a couple of opportunities. And as I said, they stayed with me because of the positive outcomes that happened. But, as we know as umpires, we get plenty of, I guess, sideline feedback that happens, but most of it's just water for ducks back.
So at AFL level, the scrutiny, the commentary is so much bigger. We had Curtis on recently. He talked a little bit about it, and he talked about how you're encouraged, I guess, notify the AFL when something's really, really bad that needs to deal with it. Do you have to deal with much of that sort of stuff? I know you're on social media, so when have you felt the need to take action in that space?
I haven't done so much, to be honest with you, Cole. I think, I have a public profile on my Instagram, and I made that to actually try and spruik umpiring and what part of umpiring. But if any of you follow me, you'll notice I'm not actually very good on social media. I don't really post a whole lot, so it's not really very useful. I do endeavour to make it a bit more, I guess, engaging and hopefully spruiking umpiring. But because it is public, I do receive, comments and negative things in my messages, on my posts or whatever you want to call it. And most of the time I just delete them, to be honest. I think if I don't read them, I don't really know what they say. And so most of the time, if I notice there's something that's come up there that's negative, I'll just straight away delete it or report it or whatever the pathway is to getting rid of it, basically. And, I think at the end of the day, if I was to read it and it was really, personally offensive, I would probably do something about it. But most people are just passionate, and, they'll say you're a bad umpire, or they'll say your decisions are terrible or whatever. But you can't really get to AFL level without expecting people to be saying things about like that about you. And also you have to acknowledge you make mistakes. I had a situation I've had many, but where, I would teach at a school. And so, students all the time are coming up to me and asking me about this and that decision. And, I think the most important thing is just to be honest. And so there's times when, in reflection, you've made an error. And, I've just been honest with students as an example. And as soon as I say, oh, no, I got that wrong, they're like, oh, okay. And that's kind of in the conversation, because you're not trying to defend yourself or say that you got it right. You're just actually acknowledging, well, on this occasion, I did make a mistake, and if I could do it again, I'd pay it differently. But that's just how it is. And so I think there's things that can go too far on social media and in general in terms of criticism. But I've been fortunate that I haven't experienced too many that have kind of got through to me, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and the pressures of AFL. How have you coped with that? You have to be very mentally strong and really back yourself in and have confidence in your own ability. So, in reflection, the last 3 or 4 years while you've been on the panel, how do you feel you've? What is it about your mental makeup that's allowed you to go through those challenges?
I guess like anything, like just umpiring in general, you get more confident the more experience you have, and that just grows by having different experiences on the field as well. So you might have, 5 games where you experience something happening, like even an insufficient 10, or a player coming and actually, I guess, challenging your decisions. And particularly at AFL level, the players are so professional that a lot of the time, those things don't come up until they come up, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with them that you haven't maybe dealt with so many times. So I think it's really just the support around you. And so as I said before, I've been really fortunate through all my umpiring career. Really, I've had fantastic coaches who have really supported me and given me that confidence. And I know Hayden Kennedy said to me when I was promoted to the senior list, which is the best thing he could have said to me, he said, I will not appoint you to a game until I think you're ready. And that was the most important thing I needed to hear, because I don't umpire. I don't want to be a token. I'm not out there to be the female umpire. I'm out there to be an umpire because that's what I'm passionate about. And so I know that my appointment in that game, my first game, was based on merit. And so, the things like that, even though, you could take them however you want, that was really important for me to hear. I heard a similar thing from Shane Harris in terms of my first sample game. And I know now that, every game that I get, I've earned. And so I think the really important thing is just that confidence. And, it's about understanding you're going to make mistakes and acknowledging that, but, making sure you have those areas of strength that you can go back to and be confident in.
What's your highlight of your AFL career so far? Have you got something a game that particularly stays with you?
Oh, it's a really good question. I made an error when I've spoken on something before, and I didn't say the game where Dylan proposed to me. So definitely the game where Dylan proposed to me was a highlight, but no, it was. So I think that was a really special game because I met Dylan through the SNFL in 2009, and we had never umpired a senior sample match or a senior AFL match together before, and this was our very first game umpiring together, and it ended up being the only game we ever umpired together. And so we drove to the game together. Yeah, you can show it if you like.
I'm
sure plenty of people have seen enough
times. You can talk through it while we're having a look at it.
It was the very first game we ever umpired together, and basically Dylan said to me we were getting a photo with the Umpires Association after the game. So we went back on the field all dressed up and got to the middle, and Dylan said, "Oh, you bounced well today," which I was lucky I did. And he said, "Oh, show me where you bounced." And we walked to the centre, and then I guess this started taking place, and I just had no idea. And so, I wouldn't say that it's every girl's dream to get proposed to on the MCG, but definitely was mine in terms of just this really special occasion. And, Dylan, for any of you on this call that know Dylan, he's not really an overly confident, outgoing person all the time. So he did not expect anyone in the crowd or anything. And then we kind of heard these jeers and cheers coming from the corporate boxes where all the people who were obviously still having something to eat and drink after the game were watching on. So it was not at all what I expected to happen at the end of our very first game together, but a really, really special memory for the two of us that, we'll cherish forever.
It was fantastic. Obviously made national headlines, and it was a special moment. So you're not married there, are you? When's that happening?
Next January.
Fantastic. So where will that be?
It's going to be in Adelaide Hills. So hopefully no bushfires and less COVID, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that all goes off well for you. Well, and look, I'm just trying to stop this video because it's making noises. Here we go. So one thing that I know you and Dylan are really good at is handling kids, because you basically, my twin boys when they were young just love seeing you and Dylan. They just thrived every time I saw you run up to you and just loved spending time. So you obviously both love kids. I can tell that. It becomes a challenge now about career versus having kids, doesn't it? Must be a conversation you've had with Dylan. Have you got any thoughts about where that's going to go?
Yeah, look, we'll start by saying your boys love Dylan, not necessarily me.
They loved you as well. They loved you.
Well, for those again who don't know Dylan, he is a kid magnet, and probably because he's a child at heart. But he just loves. We'll go to any kind of party and he'll end up hanging out with the kids. He just loves kids and gets along with them so well. He works in childcare now, which is just absolutely where his heart is, and he's perfect for it. So if it was up to him, we probably would have had kids already, and he's been really, I guess, patient in terms of giving me the opportunity to have my career. And it's definitely a conversation that we will have and continue to have. But at the moment we're just focusing on our careers and enjoying footy. And I've just turned 29, so hopefully got a few more years left in me in terms of still being able to have some kids and have a career. So we'll just kind of see how that plays out, but pretty happy with how we are at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Nicely played. All right, now we've got about 10 minutes left. We're going to have lots of questions from other umpires, I'm sure. So I'll open it up. Does someone want to unmute themselves and ask Eleni a question?
Yeah, Ellie, Barry Lewis here. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you, Barry?
Good. You're still as attractive as ever. You're a marvellous umpire. One thing I'd just like to, and of course Dylan is you obviously you're bouncing sometimes. I mean, you're a better bouncer than Chamberlain, but that's immaterial. But do you ever think along the way that you'd like to see the bounce take out of the game?
It's a great question, Barry. And a couple of years ago, there was a real push for getting rid of the bounce, primarily for like the health and safety of the umpires. We've just had another VFL umpires actually just had to have a shoulder reconstruction because he dislocated it during a VFL match bouncing. So there's a lot of reasons to get rid of it. I think the reasons being the physical side of things. Obviously, it can limit people's career in terms of that side of things. Also, the mental challenge. We know that a lot of umpires, including myself, it can be, there's a lot kind of riding on it, even though it's really not a big part of our game anymore. I'm neither here nor there. I love the traditional side of the bounce. I think the opening bounce in the grand final is always something really cool. I think, though, if we got rid of it in 2 weeks, no one would remember that we had it anymore, and they probably wouldn't care, just like bouncing around the ground, things like that. So I think at the moment it's probably here to stay after there was a big push a couple of years ago to get rid of it, and Steve Hocking basically said, we're keeping it. And that's kind of all there is to it at the moment. So we'll just see how it all plays out. I think it's a bit of a funny one because, to me, the purpose of the bounce is for it to be unpredictable, but yet we call it back generally when it's not dead straight, essentially. So it kind of seems like, the purpose of it, like in the very, very past, was that just to go anywhere and play on. And I think if we could go back to that, not that we ever will, that'd be really the purpose of the bounce. But for now, it's here to stay, and we keep going until they tell us not to.
Good stuff.
Mike?
Hello, how you going, mate? It's Raymond.
Hello.
Good, mate. Great chat. I chatted last week to Curtis about this one as well, and you mentioned it as well. It's the culture and the behaviour towards umpiring, and you spoke about passion and how passionate people make bad moves. Yes, I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, I kind of don't. Colin and I had a good chat about it on the weekend with coaches and supporters. It's kind of getting outdated. Do you guys at the AFL do a lot in regards to trying to change the behaviour of, I guess, spectators and coaches and players towards you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think you're absolutely right. There's passion, and then there's just, unacceptable behaviour, really. And, unfortunately, we only really hear of the negatives, and there's too many of them, basically. There's too many different things happening around Australia that aren't really acceptable. And I didn't mention it before, but I actually work part-time with the AFL in an umpiring growth and development role, which has a specific focus on schools and females. But there's definitely conversation around this behaviour. And, again, it's not an excuse, but we know that particularly post-COVID, having crowds back, and there's probably been a little bit of, I guess, a spike in some of that poor crowd behaviour, probably because, I guess, that lack of opportunity to share their passion for a bit of time. Again, it's not an excuse. But I know the AFL is working to hopefully, they're trying to make it a more family-friendly environment, essentially, because we know that particularly with AFLW coming through, that has helped in terms of we're getting, not just dad to the footy, we're getting mum and brother and sister and all the family. And so that means, particularly at AFLW games, we see a lot less of that type of behaviour. However, it's not necessarily, I guess, filtering through to community, local league, state league level, or to AFL level. And so there's definitely work that needs to be done in that area because, as you said, there's passion on one hand, and then there's unacceptable behaviour. And, it's easy to see that particularly, at some community levels, it's unacceptable at the moment.
And you answered my second question as well. Like you spoke about, well, you're like the face of umpiring. Do you notice that when you're out in the community or out at sporting clubs that particularly boys and girls come up to you and recognise who you are more so than other umpires?
Oh, look, more so than other umpires, but not a lot. Okay. Thank goodness. I'm not out there to be that type of person. I'll tell you just a really funny story because I thought it was just hilarious. A few years ago, you may recall we had an Anzac Day game in Melbourne that had a few umpiring challenges, and they ended up being correctly called, but the media portrayed them as incorrect, and we ended up clarifying it, saying it was all good. The next week, then the Geelong game, Geelong played at the MCG, and Geelong, it was Geelong Essendon, and we had Ray Chamberlain, Matt Nichols, and myself umpiring that game. And we went to walk around past the crowd to go to the rooms, and Nico says, "Great, they've put the girl, the bald one, and Razor Ray on. Like, we're not going to be obvious or anything in terms of who we are." And so it just kind of did make me think we probably are the three that stand out the most. Nico just because he's got a bald head, and then obviously Razor is an entertainer, and then obviously myself, I stand out because I'm a girl. So I'm fortunate though I don't really get noticed at all in the community. Perhaps sometimes at sport events in terms of when I'm teaching at them or things like that, because they'll kind of know who I am. But otherwise, no, and I'm very thankful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. this is not about you, but I think Colin's got to sort this out. I've had 10 private messages regarding my scarf, Colin. So can we sort that out, please? I'm getting bullied.
Mate, you deserve every comment. I won't stop anyone doing that. Feel free to send more comments. Okay, next question for Lenny.
Hey, Lenny, it's David Palmer here. How you going?
Good, thanks. How are you, Dave?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. I just want to let you know I really admire your hard work and determination in your pathway to becoming to umpiring the highest level of Australian rules football. There are a couple of questions I'd like to ask. On your journey, did you come across any hurdles, and what did you do to overcome them?
Thanks, Dave. Well, nice to see you and hear from you. Yeah, of course, like anyone, there's been hurdles along the way. For me, although I guess there's lots of different challenges, but for me, probably one of my biggest was fitness. And that probably comes from the fact that when I first started, most of the fitness standards were male standards. And so a lot of the time it felt like I was, I guess, aiming for things that potentially weren't achievable. And that was the really challenging thing. And I think I'm really fortunate through coming up through the SNFL. We had a 5 kilometre time trial, but it wasn't the be all and end all. So, for example, we did the 5 kilometres and Shane would say to us, this is the standard for AFL, but, that's if you want to make it AFL or whatever. It's not going to stop you from umpiring senior football here in South Australia. And so I feel really fortunate that obviously I've always known fitness is a really important thing, but as I was coming through, it wasn't the be all and end all. Whereas, for example, in Victoria until now, it was. And so that did really stop people from actually, continuing their progression or their pathway because they probably thought it wasn't possible. And, over time, like anything, I've got much better at my fitness and I'm more than capable of running out a game. But having said that, would I still achieve those strict standards of time trials for 2 and 5 kilometre that we had in the past for AFL? Probably not. But we also know that, those time trials aren't necessarily the best guides for, running patterns and things like that we do in AFL umpiring now. So fitness has been a bit of a challenge, I guess, for me. And I think that second part of it is just, I guess, the female side of things. And just that it's, as I said, I've been very, very much supported by all my peers and my coaches. I've been very fortunate on the way, but always just that bit of a, I guess, bit loneliness. I guess essentially, sometimes I sit in the change room on my own. Alternately, there's no change room to use or, things like that in terms of sometimes you feel like you're missing out because you're not part of that group all the time. But feel really fortunate that, even as I progressed through the SNFL, all those change rooms did change and they're now much more inclusive environments.
And also you were named as Young South Australian of the Year a couple of years ago. What did that mean to you?
Look, to be honest, it's I almost find it a little bit embarrassing, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's amazing, obviously, and I feel very, very humbled. But when I went to the Australian of the Year Awards, I saw all these other Young Australian of the Years who were people who had created charities and were doing all these selfless acts that had really nothing for them out of it. I started umpiring because I love football and I love being part of it, and I've progressed, really solely on that because I love umpiring and I wanted to see essentially how far I could get. The offside of that is obviously I feel really fortunate to help make a bit of a platform for females in umpiring, and I guess just spruiking that you can do things that are different from what you see. And that's kind of, I guess, why these acknowledgements come. However, it's not something I set out to do. And obviously now with my role at the AFL, I do feel fortunate that I can help, I guess, to continue that off-field stuff in terms of more females in umpiring, making umpiring more inclusive for all. And as I said, just making things that didn't look possible, maybe more possible for people out there. However, I do feel it is a little bit embarrassing, for me. I'm not someone who, I try to be a pretty humble person, and these acknowledgements are fantastic, and my family are obviously very, very proud, as am I. But I prefer to let my actions do the talking.
Hey, don't be embarrassed, Eleni. You deserve those honours. In fact, I did write it down in my notes. Also, the Order of Australia medal this year. So, yeah, no, you deserve it. You're setting the pathway for many other females, and that's what it's about. It has to be a pioneer, and you're it. Now, we've got 4 minutes left. This Zoom meeting has a time limit on it, so we've probably got time for 1 or 2 more questions.
Yeah, just more on hello. This is Andre here. Now, with all those accolades that have been thrown out at you, it's a bit of a comical thing, though. Are you a little bit disappointed that they haven't given you a statue as of yet.
Oh,
No.
Andre, you've got to realise we've got some characters in the group, Eleni, and Andre is the biggest one. And if anyone deserves a statue, it's him. So I wouldn't even bother answering that question. Andre, thanks for that. Is there anyone that has a serious question to finish the Zoom up?
Yes, there's a serious question here. Eleni and anyone else, for a young umpire that's just about to start out going from boundary to field, how important is your fitness and increasing it?
I think that's a really good question, and the fitness is really important. However, if fitness is your issue, you can improve it. I think that's a really good part of it. I look at, for example, Simon Meredith on the weekend just did his 400th game, and he has never been the fittest umpire out there. And the reason he's a great umpire is because he's one of the best decision makers. And so I think that fitness is obviously something we continue to work on. And as we progress through the ranks, the football gets faster. We start to experience that, and we get better because of it, and we start to understand the types of training that we need to do. But we also have to understand that we can't just go from being, I guess, at one level of fitness and then straight up to another level. It does take time, and it does take many pre-seasons and seasons to actually improve that fitness. But as you go up the levels, that fitness improves to each level that you need to be at. And so, as I said to you, if fitness is the problem, it can be improved. So it's probably a really good problem to have.
Eleni did spend some time pro running, which is something that helped at the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wasn't very good at it, but it was a really great way to kind of keep fit and keep motivated over the summer.
You did all right from memory. You had a nice little career there for a while.
Can I jump in again, Colin?
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah. Would you say strength and endurance should be both focused on, or would you pick one over the other?
No, definitely both really important, and for, I guess, lots of various reasons. For example, field or boundary. If you're a field or boundary umpire, you need to be strong in terms of throwing the ball in or bouncing the ball. But strength also means, I guess, protecting yourself from injury as well. And so, strength training is really important in terms of preparing your body to make sure that it's in the right space to be performing, I guess, the endurance tasks as well. And we see that, now more and more so, it's those umpires who have that balance between the running side of things and the strength side of things who actually have minimal injuries and have a longer career. So they're both really important. But again, I guess it all takes time to progress, strength or running and endurance. And so it's just about kind of making those small progressions to then eventually reach your long-term goal.
Yeah, great answer. Hey, I'm going to have to wind it up because it's going to get cut off in a minute. I don't want to go without thanking you. Eleni, we know how busy you are. You're an absolute champion. So grateful for you coming on and spending your time with these guys. We loved hearing from you, and we'll follow you as we always do, and excited about what you continue to achieve.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, everyone, for having me. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Go, Eleni.
All right, guys. Thanks again to Eleni for giving up her time. It was fantastic hearing from her. Have a great week. We'll see you Wednesday night for training, and enjoy your weekend off.
Still there, Cole?